What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Rideshare Hub. My name is Greg Wave. I wanted to tell you guys today a little story. No, I'm kidding, but I'm not. What I'm going to tell you guys is like what my Uber and Lyft journey has looked like. As far as, you know, a lot of the pitfalls and things I ran into. One thing in particular, I made one really stupid mistake, and it's the biggest thing I actually want to share with you guys in this video, because I want you guys with everything in you to avoid making the mistake I made, okay? So I started driving about 3 years ago. Initially it was just part-time. It's like a thing, just kind of looking into it, see what it could actually look like, what my numbers would look like. And so I was like doing 1 or 2 days a week. Well, then I buffed it up a little bit and I was doing like 2-3 days a week. Then I really looked at it and I was like, wait a minute, I'm making more money doing this than I'm making at the job I'm working. Now, granted, it's not like I was, you know, some big baller job. You know, I was like minimum wage, you know, barely making any money. So I quit my job and I started driving for Uber and Lyft full time. Went really great there. You know, I was younger then. I was still figuring out what I wanted to do in my life. So I was grinding out 40 to 70 hours a week sometimes while pursuing just any passion that came to my heart. You know, one thing I still do this day is I still act. And that was like when I started acting, because I was like, oh, maybe I'd be an actor, you know? So I was just doing every film I could, auditioning like crazy, and then busting ass on Uber in the meantime. Uber and Lyft, excuse me. And so it was great because for 2 years, I was just like a full-time driver, pretty much, sometimes part-time, and doing whatever my heart desired. Like any job I wanted to work, I worked. Any career I started to get interested in, I would quit whatever else I was doing and start that new career. Like just really trying to find what my mark was in life, you know? So what happens is about a year ago, I started having a lot of problems with my car. You know, there are some normal things like brakes that obviously I took care of, but I was noticing a lot of noises and a lot of things going on, and I could just tell the car wasn't running as well. Car wasn't that old, you know, it was 2013, so it's not even 10 years old yet. Getting up there, but not that bad. I had 135,000 miles on it, so again, not like the worst number, but like you're getting to the point where you need to start really watching it. You know, 130,000 miles, you're like borderline a high mileage vehicle, you know. I mean, I consider high mileage like 170, so that's not like proper car terminology or anything. It's just what I think. So the car is just having all sorts of problems, right? And so I take it in and I take it into the dealership and they're like, yeah, you know, it's going to be about $4,000 to take care of all this. So I was like, oh, these guys are full of shit, right? So I go to a different mechanic. I give him the same report. I was like, here's what they said. You know, what can you quote me at? Well, he quoted me at $3,400. So cheaper, but like still like, holy crap. And not only that, he told me that there was a code on the computer coming up for my transmission. So I was sitting there thinking, okay, am I really going to put, you know, $3,500 to $4,000 worth of repairs into a high mileage vehicle just so that the transmission might go out in a year? And that's, you know, what, $4 or $5,000? Like, I don't even really know, but somewhere around there, I'd guess. And so I was like, oh my God, I was like, I need to get a new freaking car, because I was just in such a bad place with this one. I was like, I felt like it would have been really foolish to fix it up, because it could have easily had a bad transmission problem. And then all those repairs wouldn't have meant anything, because I'd probably just go get a new car if it has a transmission issue. So start shopping around for cars. Now, what I didn't know is that used car lots won't take on negative equity. What is negative equity? Negative equity basically means that if you're financing your car and you owe more money on it than what it's worth. So the issue that I ran into, and this is where all this is coming towards, the issue that I ran into as a full-time driver is I needed a new vehicle. I still owed about $8,000 on my car, and my car at best was worth $3,000. So I had like $5,000 to $7,000 of negative equity, and I realized I needed a car. So I called a used car lot that I'd seen, and then they told me something I'd never known before, that used car lots, like any used car lot, won't take on negative equity. They won't. Only new car lots will, because they can use all the rebates on the new car to go into your negative equity. and the financer can absorb that into the loan, and it actually makes the loan make sense to them. So what I had to do was I had to buy a new car. This pretty doll of a car that I'm in right now. It's a Nissan Sentra, nothing special. But what was really frustrating about it, so I bought this car brand new for, it's a 2019. I bought it for like $18,500. I also had to I got them to give me almost $4,000 for my old car because I haggled with them for days. I didn't just go in and take the bid. I was like, no, and the only way they could give me essentially more money was by giving me more value on my old car. So originally they offered me $500 in trade-in value for my old car. It was an Altima. I ended up getting them up to almost $4,000 in trade-in value for my old car. But even with that, I still had almost $4,000 in negative equity that got absorbed into this car loan. So even though this one was only worth $18,500, my total payment with taxes and everything on this is like $25,000, which is insane. That's way too high for a Sentra. Way too high. Now, it's not really a Sentra. It's a Sentra and a quarter of an Altima. So then I had to do something else because I had all that negative equity absorbed into this loan. The one thing I realized is I was like, hey, if I get into a car accident, I'm going to have to pay out not just the negative equity from this car, but the negative equity from the last car. Because for those of you that don't know, if you don't have gap insurance, which is something that every Uber driver should have, you should 110%, if you're financing a car, have gap insurance. No reason to not have it. There's just no reason. And I'll explain why in a minute. So if you don't have gap insurance, what happens, or let's just say what would have happened in my case. Let's say I didn't get gap insurance on this car. I'm driving, let's say I'm doing a night ride. I'm giving someone a ride at 2 a.m. I get just clobbered by a drunk driver. It's his fault. My car's totaled. Guess what his insurance pays for? What they say the car's worth. The gap, so the amount stretched from 18.5 to 2,500 that I owed, I have to pay. Now, how they do it too, with these scenarios is you don't get payment plans, you don't get financing plans. They give you a month to cover that difference. If you don't cover it, it goes down on your record as a default on an auto loan, and you will never finance another car. No one will lend a car to you if you have that. I mean, maybe some really crummy used car lots, but like any decent car lot won't lend you a car. So I realized I had to get gap coverage. Now, gap coverage for me wasn't the worst. It was an extra $15 a month. And for me, I was like, that's worth it, because like, you got to think, when you drive a new car off the lot, it loses 9 to 10% of its value. So I lost the money in that value. I lost money in the negative equity from the last car. Why did my Altima get to that point? Because I drove the living shit out of it on Uber and Lyft. Because I did 40 to 60, 70 hour weeks pretty consistently for, a year and a half. And I put 90,000 miles on my car in a year. The other thing is, it's one thing if you're putting all those miles on your car and it's all highway. But with Uber, I mean, how much of it is highway? Like 10, 15%? Most of it's city driving. Most of it's a lot of braking, a lot of quick accelerating, all the things that are bad for a car. So what happened was I just totally destroyed my car. If I hadn't been a full-time driver and I'd been a part-time, I would have still been under 100,000 miles, and I'm betting that a lot of those things wouldn't have happened to my car. Everything was wrong with it. Shocks, brakes. I mean, just, you could go down the list. It had all sorts of problems, and they were all problems related to a lot of like excessive city driving. So I had to then get gap coverage. So the main thing I want you guys to get out of this video is that from start to finish, what being a full-time driver did to me is it forced me to buy a new car. I could have taken the risk and dumped $4,000 into repairs, but I mean, is that really the smart thing to do there? I still feel confident in my decision because, again, I felt like that transmission was going out. But the main lesson I want you guys to see from this, because start to finish, here's my story, is that now I'm strictly a part-time driver. I won't drive full-time after that experience. But I did it for about a year, almost 2 years, year and a half, give or take. I I moved here, I went consistently part-time, but even though I did that, I still had to go buy a brand new freaking vehicle. So my advice to you guys is don't drive full-time. Okay, it's gonna feel awesome at the time. You'll feel free, you'll feel lucrative, but it's not gonna get you at the time. When it's gonna get you is 2-3 years down the road when your vehicle's done. Just absolutely done. So the main things to get from this video, guys, get gap insurance. Because if you're a driver and you're putting all those miles on your car and you're financing your car, I can promise you your car is worth less than what the car is valued at. And if somebody hits you, even if it's not your fault, you are going to have to pay that difference. So $15 a month for good gap coverage. You're gonna want usually 120% covered when you sign up for gap, 100 to 120. A lot of like normal insurers, they only offer like 25%. So what would that have meant in my case? The gap insurance would have only covered 25% of the difference. So what's 25% of like, it's probably $6,000. I mean, that means they're gonna cover like $1,500, give or take. And then there's still $4,500 that I would have had 1 month to come up with on how to pay. So that's what I got for you guys today. That's my general start to finish story. Like I said, where I'm at today, I'm a strictly part-time driver. I do this mostly now for networking purposes for my business, but I still love it and I still see a lot of value in it as a part-time gig. But I'm telling you, pursue it part-time. Awesome. Hey, if you guys like this video, give it a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. I guarantee you, if you just avoid these pitfalls, it's going to be a smoother scenario for you guys driving for Uber and Lyft. I hope you guys crush it out there, and I will see you soon.